If you use the same basic words like very cold, very hot, or very fast, you're not showing the examiner that you have a wide range of vocabulary, and that can really affect your score. So in this video, I'm going to show you some words that you can use instead of saying very plus adjective. But before we start, if you want to learn exactly how to get a band 7 or higher in every part of the IELTS test, my full IELTS course takes you through everything step by step. So you can check it out in the description below. All right, let's get started with the very first one, which is very angry. The first word you can use is furious, which simply means extremely angry or very angry. It's a very common word which you can use in writing and speaking. So here's an example. My parents were very angry. Well, we could say my parents were furious when they found out I had lied about my exam results. Now, using words like furious, it just gives your speaking or your writing more feeling and it makes it more colorful. Now, please note that with the word furious, you could say you're furious at a person, or you could also be furious at a situation as well. The next one you can use is irate. Irate. Now, this again means very angry or just very annoyed. It's a little bit more formal than furious. The passenger became very angry. Well, no, let's change that. The passenger became irate when the airline delayed the flight for the third time. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is very clean. So the first word you can use instead of very clean is spotless, which simply means completely clean with no dirt and no stains at all. The hotel room was very clean when we arrived. No, let's change that. The hotel room was spotless when we arrived, which made a great first impression. Now, please note that spotless is mainly used to describe rooms or houses or places. It's not really used to describe people. The next one we can use is immaculate. This means perfectly clean or tidy with no mistakes and no problems. Her house is always very clean. No, let's change that. Her house is always immaculate. I don't think I've ever seen a single thing out of place. Now, please note that this is a bit more formal than spotless, but you can still use it in speaking. All right, let's move on to number 3, which is very dirty. The first word you can use instead of very dirty is filthy, which means very dirty or something that has a lot of dirt or grime or mess. The public toilets were very dirty. No, the public toilets were absolutely filthy and I didn't want to use them. Now, please note that we could just say the public toilets were filthy. That's fine. But adding the word absolutely makes it even stronger. It takes it to another level. Now, please note that filthy is a very common and natural word for the speaking test, but it can also be used to mean very. So, for example, if you say someone is filthy rich, that means they are extremely rich and have a lot of money. The next one is grimy, and this means when there's a thin layer or maybe a thick layer of dirt or grease on something. So the windows were very dirty. No, the windows were grimy because they hadn't been cleaned in months. So this simply means that there was a layer of dirt or dust or grime on the windows. So please note that this is normally, the word grimy is normally used for things like windows or walls or tables. You wouldn't use it to talk about a person. Let's move on to number 4, which is very fast. The first word you can use is rapid, which means happening or moving very quickly. So for example, the company experienced very fast growth. No, the company experienced rapid growth over the past few years. Now, please note that this is often used for processes or changes rather than physical speed. So if you know someone who walks very fast, you wouldn't say they walk rapidly. No, that would not be correct. The next one is speedy, which means quick or done in a very short amount of time. For example, I need a very fast response. No, I need a speedy response to my email because the deadline is tomorrow. Now, please note that this one's quite informal and it's more casual when compared to the word rapid. So speedy, you probably wouldn't use in writing. This would be more suitable for speaking. Let's move on to number 5 now, which is very hot. The first one you can use instead of very hot is scorching. Scorching. This just means extremely hot, and it's normally used to describe the weather or heat from the sun. So the weather was very hot. No, the weather was scorching when I visited Dubai last year. So this is a great one you can use if you're talking about a travel experience in part 2, or if you get questions about the weather in IELTS speaking. Another word you can use is boiling, which you might have heard before. And again, it simply means very hot. So the classroom was very hot. No, the classroom was boiling because the air conditioning wasn't working that day. This is a very common word in conversational English, whether you're talking about the weather or just the temperature inside a room. Let's move on to number 6 now, which is very hungry. The first one you can use is starving. Starving. This simply means very hungry. Now, this one is often used casually rather than literally. So that means you're not actually dying of hunger, you're just really hungry. Because the real definition of, or one of the definitions of starving is that you're so hungry that you're almost dead. So whenever I get home from school, I'm usually very hungry. Well, no, we could change that. Whenever I get home from school, I'm usually starving and head straight to the kitchen. This is very common and very natural, especially in speaking, but you shouldn't use this one in writing because it's very informal. Now, another one you can use is famished, which also means very hungry, but it's more formal than just saying starving. So by the time we reached the restaurant, we were very hungry. Or no, we could say by the time we reached the restaurant, we were famished. So famished is less common than starving, but you can still use it in the speaking test. All right, let's move to number 7 now, which is very noisy. The first and only good word for noisy is deafening. It means something is so loud that you can't really hear anything else. Now, please note that this word comes from the word deaf, which means you can't hear. But in casual, everyday speech, deafening just means very loud. It doesn't actually mean that it's going to make you deaf and unable to hear. Here's an example. The music at the concert was very loud. Or no, let's change that. The music at the concert was deafening and I could barely hear my friends talking. Let's move on to the next one now, which is very old. The first one you can use is ancient. This means extremely old because it's been around for a very, very long time. Now, I'm not talking about just 10 or 20 years, but a really long time. So here's an example. I recently visited some very old temples. No, we could say I recently visited some ancient temples in Cambodia, and they were fascinating. Now, please note that this word is normally used for objects or buildings or history, not for people. If you use it to talk about people, it's very rude and not very nice. Another word you can use is antique, and this also means very old, but valuable or beautiful because of its age. So for example, my grandparents have some very old furniture. Or no, we could say my grandparents have some antique furniture that has been in the family for generations. Now, please note that antique is usually used to talk about objects, not people or places. Let's move on to number 9 now, which is very poor. So the first one you can use is broke. This is an informal word and it simply means you have no money. When I was a university student, I was often very poor. No, when I was a university student, I was often broke by the end of the month. Now, please note this is a very casual word, so you can use it in speaking, but you shouldn't be using it in writing. Destitute is the next one. Destitute. Now, this means extremely poor, or you don't have enough money for the basic necessities or the things that you need to live. So when I traveled to India, I saw families living in very poor conditions. Nope. We could say I saw families living in destitute conditions near the railway station. So this is a more formal word, and it's used to describe someone who is seriously poor and really has no money. It's not normally used in casual speech. All right, let's move to the next one now, which is very rich. So the first one you can use instead of very rich is wealthy. This simply means having a lot of money or property or just valuable things. So if I were very rich, no, if I were wealthy, I would travel around the world without worrying about money. Now, this is a very common word and you can use it in both speaking and writing. It's just more formal than simply saying rich. All right, another one you can use is affluent. And this just means having a lot of money where you're living in a very comfortable or luxurious way. So I grew up in a very rich neighborhood. No, I grew up in an affluent neighborhood, so the schools were excellent. Now, this one is slightly more formal, and it's often used to describe areas or families or lifestyles rather than actual people. So they were just some words you can use instead of very plus adjective. If you want to learn even more words you can use instead of very plus adjective, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching. All the best with your studies, and I'll see you in the next video.